What a session that was. Incredible. I hope many people are online because I think what we just heard was something that is really giving us the kita. You know the kita? The kita is the kick in the We sometimes need a kita. We sometimes need someone to say, move. You know, I had the privilege in 2009 to publish this book as a report to the Club of Rome. Because I wanted everyone to see that there is a new business model not possible in the future, a business model that is being implemented now. But of course, I feel it is my honor to share with you that when you write a 450-page book that by now is in 60 languages, it's not your product. It's the product of those who are and were my mentors. People I've known, people I've met, people who have inspired me, people who have influenced me, people who have face-to-face told me, you're wrong. Because there's nothing better than someone who tells you you're not right. And thanks to those people, I'm standing here today. You know, it's very important when we observe this very polarized world that nothing of what I'm going to say constitutes a statement in favor or against. Everything that we have to do is to be in favor of better. The polarization we're facing today is one of the greatest cancers we're facing. Because you're forced to choose left or right, north or south, black or white. And there's no need to choose. But there is a need to see through the lies. You know, this here, as you can see from the slogan and the logo, is presented as cardboard. I'm not going to say the name of the company that's behind it, but this is the reality. How can we ever tolerate that there is openly lied to us? I'm sorry, we have to say it. This is lying if you're telling to me that it's recyclable. Ladies and gentlemen, we know it is not. But I think that what we've just seen is the opium of the people. We're being told that, look, this is cardboard, and the biggest packaging technique for juices and milks is actually not what we think it is. Now, I don't want to go into the negative. I want to go into the positive. I want to go into what I call the signs of abundance. Because in nature, everything evolves from scarcity to abundance through diversity. And that's what I'm looking for. So when I see a coffee, I'm not at all thinking of the bean. I'm thinking of everything we can do with the coffee beyond the cup of coffee. And since the bean is only used for less than 1%, what do you do with the 99%? I mean, do you know who's coffee drinker? You're big polluters. You're terrible polluters. Now, don't think who's tea. Who's drinking tea? You're worse. Because coffee drinkers, at least today, ingest in the body 0.2% of the bean. Tea drinkers, they only ingest 0.1% of the leaf. But the problem is we never stopped and thought, what are we doing with the rest? And that is what I quickly want to point out to you. You can drink it. You can turn it into a substrate for a mushroom. The waste of the mushroom, rich in protein, is a great feed for your chicken. If you don't have a chicken, give it to your dog. You can wear it. Patagonia and Eco Alf have coffee-enriched clothing. You can put it into the carpet. You can turn it into an insulation material. And you can use it as paint because coffee resists ultraviolet. Have you ever thought of coffee like that? You know, when tomorrow morning you drink your cup of coffee, you say, insulation. Or paint. Wonderful way to have a new dress that doesn't smell because I have my odors absorbed by coffee. Now, this is nothing new. Grandma knew that already. Because if you have a bad smell in your refrigerator, what did Grandma do? Put in coffee beans. Ladies and gentlemen, we have never seen coffee like this before, and yet we do not have an industry like this. Yes, today we have 6,000 farms doing mushrooms and coffee. And yes, we have 2 factories already turning coffee into textile products. But we have to learn to be very clear in our mind that in our search for doing good, we cannot fall into the trap like I fell into the trap. This is the factory Ecover. This was in 1989, I read that there was going to be climate change. 89, okay. In 1989, we were told there was going to be a rising of sea levels. And I said, that means that my next factory has to be a zero-emission factory. I built it. Took me 3 years. That's the reason why I cannot tolerate those big executives who promises net zero by 2050. Kick them out of the room if you see them. Don't tolerate this. I was 33 years old, and I decided to build this factory as a zero emission, and I did it in 3 years. Why do the big corporations need 28 years from today? Ladies and gentlemen, but I have to confess that I was building palm oil-based products, and I didn't know about palm oil. But the moment that I landed in Indonesia, in Kalimantan, and I realized that the palm oil was destroying the rainforest, even as a zero-emission factory, I failed. I was not the guru that I thought I was. Because biodegradation does not mean sustainability or regeneration. So I needed to change my thinking completely. And that's why an initiative that we already took in 1984 became for me so important: the regeneration of rainforests, the regeneration of biodiversity. You know, we felt so confident that we believed we could do it. You know what happens? When you believe you can do it, you can do it. You know, this is the beauty. I didn't have the science. The scientists told me it was a waste of time. Don't try to regenerate forests. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the forest is standing there. We did regrow it. We did put the factory so that the resin from the trees was processed locally. Yes, and we were so crazy in our mind, we said, full employment will be the goal. We have full employment. Because if you put it in your mind that you have to become creative and you have to generate jobs, then you will do. You will find the opportunities. And you know where I learned it? In the forest. Because guess what? In the forest, no one is unemployed. Isn't it fantastic? In the forest, everyone is always working to the best of their abilities. Beautiful. I mean, have you ever seen in a forest like that? As a social system where everyone is always doing their best, young and old. And so when we realized how far we could go and we were generating cash revenues, all of a sudden we thought that we have to put our money to good use. And our best use we could invent was every child gets a bicycle at the age of 6. That was the big spending. We wanted to see traffic jams of bicycles. No other traffic jams. And then we learned that since we do the forest, we have more rain. We increased the rainfall in the area with 10% because of the forest. And this is the picture that was a gift to me from Masaru Emoto. Who remembers Emoto? Masaru made me the picture and said, "You got beautiful water." I said, "Yes, it's beautiful." And with 3 liters of water a day and bicycles for every child, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest thing I've ever realized, I think, in my life was be part of the team headed by Paolo Lugari, an amazing thinker, whereby we succeeded in closing the hospital for lack of patients. Did you hear me? We closed the hospital for lack of patients. What is your model? More hospital beds with more money? Close them because people are healthy. And this is the new thinking. This is what I call towards the ecology of peace. That's why the previous session resonated so much with me. We need an ecology of peace. And the ecology of peace allows us to throw out this traditional thinking and the questioning that says, is the glass half full or half empty? And supposedly, we're now going to determine you as a positive or a negative-minded person. Excuse me for my very bad language. Bullshit. Because the glass is always full with water and air. And if you don't see that everything is full all the time, then you're missing the air. And if you don't have air, I give you 10 minutes to rethink. You will not even get to the 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we need to think beyond the logic. And let me talk about a project that is very dear to our hearts, and it's about gold and silver. You know, the biggest black market today and the biggest money being earned today on black markets is not with cocaine. It's with gold. Gold, if you like it or if you don't like it, if it's legal or it's illegal, it will always be mined. And this is an official, legal mine. Wow, would you like to be there? And this is the unofficial one in Peru, total destruction of the rainforest with gold and mercury. Now, ladies and gentlemen, do you know that you can't have gold illegal without having mercury? Who is delivering the mercury? I'm not going to give you the details because I will be shot by the time I get out of this room. This is hard reality. The black market of mercury is a black market no one talks about. Have you read about it in the newspapers lately? Do you know what mercury does? Europe has prohibited mercury, but it is shipped by submarines all the way to Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. Submarines. Submarines. This is the kind of crime level we're going against. And therefore, we need to rethink, is this mining? Yes. This is how 60% of the gold in the world is being mined today. 60%. Ladies and gentlemen, look it in the eye. You want to now talk about climate change? Or do you want to talk mining? So we have to change the mining logic. We have to come to new terms. And the new terms is that we have to rethink the business model. The biggest demand for gold is not as jewelry. The biggest demand for gold is in your phone, is in the medical systems, and that's dust. And guess how the business model is today? Gold is extracted from the earth, not like a surgery, but with explosives. The gold is transferred, with mercury or not, with high heat and beat into blocks of gold, an ingot. But it was dust in the beginning, and the biggest consumers are dust. Why do we go 2 times through a heating up of the gold to make it from dust into an ingot, from an ingot into dust. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Have you ever heard it as an environmental project? Who is buying gold that is not made with mercury? Do you have a certificate? Do your phones have certificates? Do your medical equipment have certificates? And we don't. And that is why we need to take a step back and realize that from coffee to gold, there is a huge opportunity to break through and to make a huge difference. You can start with a cup of a cup of coffee, I think. You start with a cup of coffee and you move on with a phone where the grams of gold in your phone are actually mercury-free and crime-free. And you know what the industry will tell you? We can't guarantee you. This is the level of collapse we have. But then I see this beautiful sea, and I know that there is a lot of life in the sea. And then I get inspired by these vortices that are moving inside the water. And then I see these amazing animals called the blue mussel, el mejillon. The blue mussel, which is extracting protein from the seawater, is extracting vanadium and iron from the seawater, puts that in 2 little pockets, and when it finds a place to live, in 2 minutes it makes the glue that will make it stick forever to that wall. Whatever the force of the sea is. You know why is this so important? Because you're still thinking about industry in the old model. That means industry where we're doing assembly with screws. That's over. Assembly is being done with glues. Glues that will stick everything together. The new Airbus is glued together. Your new cars are glued together. Glue is what makes the next leap in efficiency, eliminating labor and eliminating the screws. And what kind of glues are we making? Very efficient, high-tech chemical glues. Full with what? Formaldehyde. Carcinogens. Have you ever thought about glues you're using? It's not about a little print you put on a piece of paper. It's about the glues that is sticking everything together that we have today, because you have no screws anymore. Now, this is where I get inspired by nature. This is where I see that those threads that are made within 2 minutes by that blue mussel, those threads will last and be tensioned as long as it is there, and the moment it's not needed anymore, they turn biodegradable. Wow, this is design. This is design for sustainability. Could we do that for our auto industry? Could we do that for a couple other industries? Now, this material is made by nature for nature, and it's made by a little mussel that's floating in the sea. This is how we have to look at the future. This flower I presented 2 years ago as well in the Planetiers in 2020. It's the cardoon. This is the main raw material of our company called Novamont to make bioplastics. We mix it with sugars made from sugar beets. Did you know that when you have sugar from a sugar beet, you can make alcohol? If you have an oil from a flower, you can make an acid. An acid plus an alcohol makes a monomer. If you have monomers, you make polymers. That's how easy it is with plastics. I don't know why they make it so difficult, but it's actually very easy. But what is more important, as a company, we have decided the goal is not making plastics. The goal is making functional materials that will turn back to soil. And we'll do that in a company factory that is an old petrochemical factory. We're turning petrochemistry into biochemistry. Now, this is the kind of rethinking we need. This is how we have to advance. But then we're stuck with something like this. I deliberately didn't make the picture of the plastic bottle that's being distributed here. Ladies and gentlemen, according to Coca-Cola, in a high-end scientific study made about 22 years ago. It was determined beyond any doubt that plastics is better for the environment than a glass bottle. You know, when you get this kind of information repeated to you over and over again, you should take a couple steps back and say, what is the hypothesis? Now, this is science. Science means you check the hypothesis. What are the conditions under which, the framework conditions under which you made this analysis? And of course, the analysis is you only use it once. Now, what happens if I take the bottle of glass, I crush it into dust, I put it into an oven, I inject CO2, you know this gas we have a little bit too much of, right? Then I have a glass foam, and the glass foam that we have here, the blue, is 98% CO2 and 2% glass, and it's one of the most efficient building materials today. Approved in Europe, miracle. Frank Gehry, you know the Bilbao Museum, Guggenheim Museum? It's the first in Europe to be built with this material. It is resistant to heat, resistant to water, resistant to stress. It's structural material. It can be made block by block, and every box of that is one bottle that you just used. If you include the use of the bottle of glass as a building material, plastics don't make economic nor ecological sense anymore. You just change the hypothesis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the building construction technique that was developed, where what you see there is 16 bottles of glass going up in the air, and this is a new construction technique. It is being used throughout Scandinavia, and there are already 11 factories turning glass bottles into building structure material. The result is we're fighting not against plastics, we're fighting for better building materials. This is the spirit that we have to maintain. Now, I've been very involved in a small island in Spain called El Hierro. And this island decided in the year 2001 it wanted to restructure its economy. We developed 8 different new industries. Several of them I presented to you in 2020. I'm not repeating, but I'm giving you the update. Because then it was decided that we would have windmills. Now, these windmills in the next 3 years will be replaced by kites. A kite that arrives in a container that connects to the grid in 30 minutes. 30 minutes! You arrive with the container, you connect, you launch your kite. Now, have you played with a kite before in your life on the beach? When you're doing like this with a kite, it goes up. You know why it goes up? Because you're making your own wind. We're making our own wind with these kite structures. And what is very important is that now we're going to create an abundance of energy on an island by having wind power generated by kites 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because a kite, once you're above 200 meters, you have wind forever. That means we're beating nuclear power on the base of costs. You have too much power, so you're forced to transform it into hydrogen. Bad luck. This system will turn the islands into centers of hydrogen economy. Why? Because there is an excess of wind. Why? Because the wind blows day and night when you're above 200 meters. The largest untapped source today is not solar. It's the wind that's right above us, which we don't even measure, because our satellites are set to measure up to 200 meters. And what you don't measure, you don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just share with you a short video of what is today my life project. A project where I want to transform the maritime industry I want to transform it and prove that it's perfectly possible to use also this kite technology on the boat. We're having 550 square meters of solar panels. We're able to launch the kite on the boat while the boat is sailing. And when we are sailing with the kite, we're generating too much power. You heard me? We're generating too much power. As a result, we have a complete hydrogen system. The white in the middle of the boat is our hydrogen system. We're producing hydrogen from seawater. Hydrogen from seawater stored on the boat, so when we have no wind and no sun, we're powered by hydrogen. We have all the water we need, unlimited, and we have too much power on the boat. Ladies and gentlemen, who invented the crisis of gas? I'm sorry, I don't get it. It's perfectly possible to generate these new forms of energy. Now, you can't do this for a whole nation, but you can do that for any community, any village, any island. There are 220,000 islands in the world with 1,000 people living on it, and all of them, except one, they all are using diesel generators. It's time to call it a stop. But I have to end with a bad note. Have you ever heard of the very famous Charter for Energy in Europe? The Charter for Energy in Europe is an agreement from 1997 whereby 52 governments, including all European governments, promised to energy companies in coal, in nuclear, and in oil and gas that if there is any change in the policy, they will pay for the profits they lost. Ladies and gentlemen, it's one of the greatest hidden scandals of Europe. This is the case of Rockhopper in Italy. Rockhopper was speculating that Italy may very well prohibit oil exploration within 12 miles from the coast. And when Italy did prohibit it, Rockhopper filed suit under the Energy Charter against the Italian government and won the case in a court that is not a court of the public, but a private court where there are no judges, but lawyers of the companies. Ladies and gentlemen, let's look reality in the eye. The Energy Charter makes it impossible for us to turn and make the transition because the 1.5 trillion needed in the Green Deal is about the equivalent of the 1.5 trillion in profits Europe has guaranteed the petroleum, the oil and the gas companies and the coal companies in profits until 2050. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that? Who from the journalists are here? Report. Get it out. Because it's unacceptable. And that's why, to conclude, I write children's stories. Because I've given up on those politicians. I have more than 100 pictures with heads of state. And you know what I have as a memory? The picture. For the rest, nothing. Except one time when I was in Bhutan. The royal family in Bhutan is very different. Ladies and gentlemen, politicians cannot change reality. The only way we're going to succeed in changing reality is when we're reaching out to the children. We're inspiring the kids. We're bringing them the greatest stories about the blue mussels. We're bringing the stories about the wind you can catch at 200 meters high. That's the stories we have to bring out, because our politicians will say no, or our business people say it's too expensive, and the scientists are paid by both of them will say this will be very difficult and takes too much time and a lot of years of study. Ladies and gentlemen, scrap it. Tell the children every night a great story, and I guarantee those children will change the world in a much more rebellious way than we ever could imagine. Thank you very much.